Welcome to the Profits in Pajamas podcast. I'm Danielle Detiege, or Coach Danny D, and I help women to create luxury brands by creating processes and tightening their branding. This is where we talk about how to build your business in a way that allows you to work with ease and enjoy your life. My happy space is spending as much time as humanly possible in my pajamas, and I want to help others to find their happy space while still running profitable businesses. So get comfortable and let's dig in. Hello and welcome to the Profits in Pajamas podcast. I am your host, Coach Danny D. Always here trying to help you find that great space of work-life balance where you are living a holistic, fulfilled life with joy. You can be successful in your business and also be successful in your life. So I am excited today to bring a guest to you guys. I have Arielle, and she is going to be talking about wealth and growth, and I'm so excited about that. I'm going to share a little bit about her and her bio, and then we're just going to jump in because y'all know I love to just get right down to it so we can just get this information and we can have better businesses in 2025. So um, Arielle Deane is a innovative business and wealth strategist and the host of the Independent Mom podcast. So y'all go and follow her podcast so y'all can get more of her insight. With over 15 years of experience developing growth strategies and launching products for Fortune 500 companies, Arielle's true passion lies in helping BIPOC women and moms simplify their path to wealth. So we all want to get to that money. We all want to we all want to have, strategies to help us get there. I love strategy is one of my favorite words because sometimes we just assume things are going to come together and we're not doing anything to make it come together. So first, I want to welcome you to the show, and then I want to dig a little bit deeper into who you are and our topic for today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited too because I love the idea of making profits in pajamas. I'm trying to coin the term luxuriously fulfilled because I feel like we often have to
Oh,
have this tug of war between can I live more comfortably or do I have to do what actually feeds my soul? And I want us to be able to have both. So I think that's huge.
I love that. You have to, like, I need you to be just using that word everywhere, luxuriously fulfilled. Like, that just gave me goosebumps. I love it. No, because I do believe that we think that we have to go through hard and that
Mm,
like enjoyment, fulfillment is something for later, like when we retire or when
yep.
we get all the kids out the house or whatever, like, but not today. And I'm like, no, no, no. I want fancy today. Like, I don't
Yeah. And
like
I feel
even if
like a
it's
lot of us feel like we can't do anything that's like of service or helping people. Like I feel like I always thought, well, if I do the thing that I really want to do, I'm going to be poor. So it was always like I had to, right? We have to choose. And so I feel like we need to stop having to choose. It's not an either or, it's an and.
right. Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. The and because you can serve and get paid. You don't like we don't have to be impoverished to be in servitude. And that actually
Yes,
makes it harder for us to serve because we're
exactly.
like, how can you serve if you are depleted or you're worried
Hmm.
about, if the lights are going to get cut off, how are you going to be focused on your service? Like
That's so
that's
true.
oh my God, yes. Okay, we getting it. But I don't want to skip over you getting to tell us a little bit more about yourself before we get
Yes.
like all the way in. So one of my favorite questions is tell me about your entrepreneurial journey. I love like hearing how you got here.
So I would say my journey has probably been like a very circuitous path that sort of just ended up here. Because I would say probably like a long time ago, my goal was always like go to corporate, run the corporate ladder. I have an MBA. I did like all the degrees things like I think all of us tend to do because we think that's the path to happiness and wealth and all the things. But my dad actually later in life was an entrepreneur. And watching him, I actually watched him struggle. He went from this job, he got laid off right before my sister was about to go to college. And so in the back of my mind, I always thought entrepreneurship was interesting, but I just had this like, oh my God, it's going to be the worst. It's going to be so hard. So I felt like I just kept dodging and I kept dodging it. In 2020, I got furloughed from my job and I was like, I've been saying I want to try entrepreneurship, but I'm always scared to, right? I didn't know what to do. And so in 2020, I sort of like went a little bit deeper. And part of that was because a longer time ago, I had gotten laid off myself when I was pregnant. And that was the first time I realized my job is not going to look out for me, right? I was like, I'm pregnant.
Girl.
And because I worked in consulting, they were like, we can't be sending you as many places anymore. You're not going to be able to work as many long hours. And I was like, I need to always be able to take care of myself. I need to
Mhm.
always have a safety net. And that has always been in the back of my head. But the most immediate next term is to go back to a corporate job, right? So that's what I
Mhm.
did. And so in 2020, when I was furloughed for about 2 months, I was like, this time I'm going hard. So I took all the courses, I did all the programs, and I ended up doing consulting with a former company that I used to work with. And that was like first dipping my toe in because I made more money that year than I had made the whole year before. And I was
Mhm.
like, there's something here. But I always felt like I had to choose between my corporate life and pursuing some of these entrepreneurship things. And I was like, I am the only paycheck here, so I need to get focused. And so it really took, I would say, probably almost 4.5, 5 years of saying, okay, what am I going to do to put myself in a place, in a position to be able to actually try entrepreneurship without a lot of fear, without um, the financial burden. And so I literally, like we talked about strategy, like I literally mapped out like, okay, well, how much money would I need to have? What are the things I need to do on the side? And then it kind of just became happenstance. I decided to take um, like a mini sabbatical. I took like a few, like maybe a month and a half off from my job. And I feel like that was just like the most freeing experience of my life. And I fought it for so long because I was like, if I take a sabbatical, it's not going to be good for my career. I don't want to go back. But I went to done sabbatical. I went to Barbados where my mom's family is from. And I just felt like, where have I been? It was like a wake up call to my
Mhm.
soul. And I talked to my aunts and all these people. And so literally shortly after coming back, I went back to work and I was like, I can't keep doing this. I was like, I feel like stepping back into this building is killing my soul. And
Yeah.
so that sort of started me on the way. And literally within a few months, I walked away from my job and decided to go all in on entrepreneurship, which was not originally the plan. The original plan was like build up the whole business and then slowly move out. But it just was, I couldn't split the time between the two. It was just too exhausting. And so I guess that's kind of my journey, but it's definitely been a little bit of a windy path to get here for sure.
I don't think I've met anybody who had a straight path yet. So, like, I don't think, I mean, honestly, I really don't,
That's
I
fair.
don't think that I've seen it. Like, everybody has,
Mhm.
like, this story and all of these parts and pieces. And usually at the time, they don't make, they didn't all make
Sense.
sense. But then in the end, you're like, oh, that's why that needed to happen for
Yeah,
this to
yeah.
happen. Um, One of the things that you said that I can't skip over, especially with the, state of the economy right now, is um these jobs don't care about you. Um,
Yeah, it's
I mean,
true.
no, I'm not saying that I'm definitely not one of those, oh, everybody should quit a 9 to 5 and become an entrepreneur. I'm not
Agreed.
one of those people. But regardless of what your path is, make sure that you're always looking out for your best interests.
Hmm.
You know, I literally had a coworker die at the job
Oh my
and someone
gosh.
else be in that seat in,
Mm.
less than 2 weeks.
Hmm.
Um, I, was talking to a friend, I have my whole balloon community. So I'm talking to a friend about the whole thing with Party City closing. Like they just brought them people in a meeting and was like, yeah, we closed
We're done. Yeah.
right before Christmas. And they
Can you
had
imagine?
workers that were on a trip in China and they was like, y'all might want to figure out how to get back home.
Are you kidding me?
The people had just made it to China and they had
Wow.
to turn around and get on planes and um get
Wow,
back
that's
home.
crazy.
Yes.
Mm.
So the reality is
Yeah,
we all have to be prepared for, like you said, being able to take care of ourselves.
a
And
hundred percent.
that may be, starting a business, that may be having a business in addition to your, 9 to 5,
Hmm.
investing.
Yep.
It could be just being ready if you need to look for another position, like just
Hmm.
being,
Hmm.
staying on top of what's going on in your industry so that you're always competitive.
Yes, 100%. Because I agree. I think for a lot of people, myself included at the time, it was near impossible for me to like truly have a side business and truly do well on my job, right? It always felt like it was gonna cause split. And so I always tell people like starting a whole nother business, what like I actually tried it for a while. I was doing consulting for a while and trying to do my job. And I was burnt out and I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. And so I think to your point, it's really like, how do I set myself up to have other areas where money is coming in that requires less work? And for me, investing became the path because I didn't have to deal with customers, right? I didn't have to write a proposal to them. I didn't have to do all of those things. I could just be really strategic about understanding the market and my money and then watching that grow kind of alongside. And that really became my safety net. And I think is definitely something that is so important for people to understand because it is probably the easiest way for me. For some people, it's probably not, right? But for me, it was the easiest way to start to build a cash flow and a safety net. And then what I sort of called like a business runway without having to take on a whole nother job.
I love that. I love that. I want to dig a lot deeper into the runway and the investing. But before we switch, something you said I wanted to kind of just hone in on. And this may not have been where you were going, but I see it often, like, because we hear, oh, you should have all these streams of income and all
Mm.
of that, right? And you said I was struggling to do this business and my job. And what I want to touch on there is just I see a lot of times that people will just say, "Oh, I need 7 streams of income," and then they just like start doing all of these random things, but they've not mastered one yet,
Yep, yep.
And that's like a big thing for me, like master the one thing.
Hmm.
Because like
Hmm.
having 7 things that are like at 10%,
Right. It doesn't.
you still at
Exactly.
70%. You're not at
You still
100% of
exactly.
anything. Like it's not an additional stream of
Yeah.
income if it is not its own entity of successfulness. Like,
Yes. Yes.
so if you are in a position, and it is hard, because I've been there before, like in that space where I'm still working and running a
Hmm.
business, that's not easy.
It's
um,
not.
a lot of people do it, and I mean, I think it's a good way to fund your business, as you grow it. But understand that if you're, what does it take for you to be successful at a thing?
Yes. Yes. I think that's so true. And because I always say to people, like, if you're doing great in your job, right? Like, my job was gonna pay me way more than a side hustle thing was for probably a little while, right? And so I did have to make some adjustments to say, well, it makes more sense for me to continue rising, right? Continue getting raises and bonuses that were going to drive my income a lot faster because I already knew how to do that, right? I already had the connections, I already had the reputation. But I do think at some point you have to recognize, okay, how can I start to peel off just a little bit of time for this other thing that is mine? But I 100% agree. I do not believe in seven streams of income immediately. It's like start with one, focus, go deep, master that, and then you can like easily start to like not easily, slowly start to add on other things that feel like a natural extension. But I feel like trying to do 15 things just means you're doing all of them probably halfway and
Yes.
not
No,
well.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's like as soon as that one business gets hard, you start another one. And I'm like, it's gonna get hard at that
Oh,
same
too.
spot.
Right.
Like it's gonna
It's
like what are
true.
we doing? Like you just adding more stress. And I like what you just said, a natural extension. Because a lot of times that's
Hmm.
the other part of it. It's like that don't even make sense. Like where did that like,
Exactly.
because a lot, I think we get caught up in what the flavor of the week is, of,
Yes.
what, social media is saying, what the wave of
Hmm.
the future is, fill in the blank.
Uh-huh.
And
Everyone's trying to
then
learn AI. Like, you may not be an AI specialist. It's
right, like,
okay.
and that is absolutely fine. But,
Hmm.
hone in, like, if you spent the same energy starting something new, honing in on the thing that you already have,
Yeah, yeah.
how much further could you, go and excel
100%.
in that thing? And then once that thing is like kind of like on autopilot, I mean, it's never
Hmm.
fully, but where it's kind of functioning, then you add something else,
Right, right, exactly.
but like juggling it all at once is just like
It's worse. I always say to be like, you don't want to leave a job and create another job that's just as stressful, right?
yes,
And I feel like
yes,
sometimes we don't think about that. Like, and that was always my fear because having watched my dad, I always thought, oh my gosh, to be an entrepreneur means I'm gonna have to be working crazy all the time. It means you can never. And I was like, well, if that's the level of stress as an entrepreneur, I might as well just stay in the job because it's the same, it's the same
right. I
stress.
mean, at
I
least it's a
do think
job,
they're different stresses, but
yeah, at the job, you got that check coming every two
right.
weeks, right?
Exactly.
Regardless.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, I mean, look, you could have worked really hard this month, but that might not be the month
Hmm.
that you see that the harvest.
Your
And
turn.
that's
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
true.
real, but
That is.
I do agree that it doesn't have to be as grueling as we kind of make it
Hmm.
seem a
Hmm.
lot of times. Like if you're not grinding all the time, then you're not, serious about being an entrepreneur. But then I think that brings us back to that, concept of being strategic
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
making decisions that make sense and that keep you from that perpetual burnout.
Yes, 100%. I think that's very true. And having that runway, like to I was talking about earlier, a lot of times if people don't like sort of set up a runway, they're like, well, I'll just jump and figure it out. And I was like, well, you're going to do a lot of things out of desperation because you're not going to have the money to actually think through, make sure it's the right decision, right? And so allowing yourself to build up something that gives you that space to actually help create an angle and be strategic about how you want to build a business, I also think is really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want you to kind of delve a little bit deeper into that runway. Just, I mean, I know what you mean, but just, explain that a little bit more, like
Hmm.
what you mean by that runway. And then we can kind of go from there. But I love that concept of giving yourself that space.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so one of the things I talk a lot about is I don't think people like us jump into entrepreneurship, right? I think what I call where we stretch into entrepreneurship, right? Because we don't have the luxury to just be like, okay, well, let me just jump and see what happens. Now, some people do, and if you do, and that's you, go for it. But a lot of the people I know, it's sort of like a very kind of slow and thought through process. And so in that, I kind of work through these were sort of the steps that I did. But I think the biggest piece about the runway is really thinking about how can I leverage where I am right now to make where I want to go a lot easier and a lot simpler, right? So I think one of the biggest ones obviously is money. And thinking about it not just, okay, how can I make the most money in the business, but are there other things that I can be strategic with to set me up? So for example, once I sort of got all of my finances together, because I'll be the first person to say I was not always great at finances, and that was a big part of my initial journey. Was I was like, I have to get to a place where I'm actually managing well what I already have in order to be ready to have more and manage the more better. And so one of the things, as soon as I got a little bit of money, is I was trying to be like, well, should I buy my house? And I want to have this house, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, nope, I'm going to keep renting in this small little place where I am so I can buy an investment property. Right. And so I bought an investment property. And actually, well, then at the time, I actually did a house hack. Right. So I lived in it for a little bit. But I was thinking about, okay, well, if I buy this property based on what I think it's going to do, this might also be another avenue to cash out some money. And then I started really going deep in learning investing and also mostly trading. And again, right, investing and trading, all those things have risk, but I really took the time and invested and said, now that I have steady money coming in, how can I use this money to pay and set me up for where I want to be afterwards? I took a coaching certification, right? So I really learned, I have an MBA and I did business undergrad. So I understand business and I worked in companies, but entrepreneurship is like a whole different world.
Yes,
Like some
yes.
of the fundamentals of business are the same, but when you don't have a huge brand already, you don't have a huge audience already, right? It's a very different set of skills, right? So
Yeah.
I went through that, I learned certification. And so I think really kind of working backwards to say, if I know this is where I want to be, how can I start to give myself time now before I'm under pressure to start dipping my toe in, right? To start stretching into this a little bit more and a little bit more. And so that was really what I did. I thought about how long would I ideally like to be able to have an extra set of money before I have to make money in the business, right? And for me, it might have been
Hmm.
a little bit longer because I am a primary parent, as I call it, or a single parent. So I needed more than like people always talk about like 3 months emergency. I was like, that's nothing. I was like, I needed like 15 months. I
Right.
said, if I can have 15 months that is separate from my personal savings, right? 15 months that I've set aside to give myself time to get this business up and running, that I've given myself time to think about how I want to do it. That felt like a good amount of money. And so everyone's going to have a different risk, assessment. And if you have a partner who has a great job, you might be able to do it with way less time. But I think really thinking through what are all of those things that once I cross over, right? And that could also be a new job, right? It could be
Hmm.
anything that you might be doing that feels like there's some risk. What can I start to do to set myself up? And one of the things, one of my coaches taught me that has been super valuable is she had me do this exercise. Her name's Patrice Washington. She had me do an exercise called what if versus what is. And so lots of times whenever we're about to make a leap, all of the what ifs happen. I was like, what if I don't have enough money to live? And what
Yes,
if
yes.
I lose my car? Like all of the what ifs, right? And so I like write down all of the what ifs. What are all of the things that are scaring you? And then like what's the what is? Like what are actually would you do if that actually happened tomorrow where your business made no money and you ran through all of your runway? What would happen, right? And so I started to think about it. I was like, well, I could live with my mom, I could live with my sisters, I could, like you just start to push yourself to be like, okay, if I
Hmm.
actually address the worst case scenario, it doesn't feel quite so scary.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of that. And I think that's a big part of the runway. Lots of times we just think about, here's the business and I want to do the business and how do I go after that? But for me, someone is generally risk averse. I was like, I need to actually have the runway so that if any other bad things keep happening, I
Hmm.
have a solution, right? I have a plan. I have something that gives me that pathway. So this journey and this transition doesn't seem quite so scary.
Yeah. I whew. I love that. I love everything about that.
So I know I said a lot.
You said and you it reminded me of when I was at that point of leaving my job. Like
Mhm.
I knew long before I left that I didn't want to be there anymore. But
Mhm.
I also knew that at that time I was not living in a fiscally responsible way to not have a job,
Yeah.
right? So I had like this 2-year plan, like that was like, okay, can we get down to a one income household?
Hmm. Hmm.
Like I know my husband has his job. I want to make sure we can get down to a one income household. And that was important to me because one, I wanted that runway, right? Of like not feeling pressured immediately to be producing.
Yep.
But two, I met my husband before, and he is, he's the most supportive, partner I could ask for, but he is also definitely, protector, provider,
Hmm.
he takes that very seriously. So I knew that even if it was my shortcoming, he
Hmm.
was going to internalize that as a failure,
Yeah.
right? And so
Mm.
I'm like, that's not fair.
Right, right. Yeah.
Like I could not live with that. So that was like the thing that made me be like, okay, I need this. Like I need to make sure I'm good
Yeah.
before I just like call this quit. So I think that, yeah, regardless of your circumstance, like that runway is so very important that we are
Hmm.
thinking about that. Another thing that you said that I want to kind of like, highlight is that when we're in situations where we don't have that runway, we make decisions out of desperation.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, you can damage your brand in that way because now all of a sudden you the cheap girl or or you took this client that maybe you shouldn't have taken
Yep.
and
Yep.
now you got this whole Karen situation. This person's like, they're upset with your business because you took on something that you really couldn't produce because you don't have the cash flow,
Yep.
um it always, just in my experience, is always when you take that client you weren't supposed to take, something goes wrong.
Hmm.
And then you gotta fix something. It always becomes a financial and
Yeah.
mental lesson
And emotional.
when
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
make those bad decisions. But when you are not financially in the right place, then you you can't even stand on your own
Hmm.
customer service or your own standards. You know what I'm saying? Like if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
if you don't have the money and then this person is wanting their money back, your answer is different than if you were in a situation where you had
Yep.
that runway where you're like, you know what, it's going to cost me more dealing with this
To
bad
take this
client
on. Hmm.
than I'm going to make off of this experience. So I just wanted to highlight that because I don't think
Yeah.
people realize how when our money get funny, we start making some
Yeah. We start making
questionable
not good.
decisions.
Yeah. And I think across the board, right? I think even in the flip side of like you also just out of desperation, sometimes it's harder to even sell what you want to sell because people can sense, right? When you're
Yes.
super desperate and you're willing and they're like, that's okay. I
Like,
think
look,
I'm all
what's
right.
wrong with it? Why
Right.
why are you
Exactly.
why are you so aggressive
Exactly.
about it? Like, what's wrong with
Yeah. And
it?
then you're like, well, then what I'm selling must be bad. And it's like, well, no, you just are coming at it from the wrong angle, the wrong energy, right? And so I think on both ends, it can end up costing you. Now, that's not to say that through an entrepreneurial journey, there's not going to be those times when money gets low, right? And I think those are things you have to be open to. And also, like I always say to people, is you may want to quit the current job you have, but it might actually make sense for you to do another part-time corporate, right, job that's easier, right? Or maybe a job that's more aligned with where you ultimately want to be, but gives you more flexibility. And so I don't necessarily say like, oh my gosh, once you leave, you got to leave. You can never go back, right? Because I think sometimes it feels like it's this dirty thing. And I was like, no, first of all, do what you got to do to pay your bills. Number
That
one,
part.
always keep your finances in order. That's sort of been my biggest lesson in life. And then you can always sort of craft and make it work however you want to. But lots of times we feel stuck because of where we are, because of all of the time that we've spent and all the things that we've done. But it's like sometimes you need to get out of that space, right? If you really want to do entrepreneurship in, something else, you might want to just go find another type of job in that industry. And that might be the bridge that you need, right? That might help to give you the runway. If you don't yet feel like you have the time to build up, 2 years of savings or whatever it might be, you're like, I need to get out of here today. Then maybe it's a step move in a different direction, but
Hmm.
that's still creating the bridge to the entrepreneurship maybe that you want to get to.
No, and I two things. One, what I processed in that was, we think about this runway before we do something, but you could build a runway at any point and stage. Like you said, there's those dips and those lows. You
Mm-hmm.
can, one, you said about the financial, by being, fiscally responsible, knowing that just because you got cash don't mean you need to be spending cash. That's
Mm-hmm.
one way that you can always be creating a runway, that you have
Yep.
reserve for these things that inevitably are going to come up in the flow of business.
Yep. Yep.
But two, you can, you may not feel like you have a runway right now, but you
Mm-hmm.
can create one. Like you say, you can get a part-time job. You can, start investing. You can do other things to build that runway where you are. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
even if
Yeah.
you're in the middle of that journey. And the second thing that I wanted to like, just kind of highlight that you just said was that it's not a dirty word for you to go, like, especially right now in this economy. I've had a lot of conversations with people where they're like on the fence of should they go, and
Mm-hmm.
get a job or what should they do. And I think that, as entrepreneurs, there's some shame attached to
Mm-hmm.
going and getting a job or going back into the workforce, and whatever works with for your situation
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
what you need to do. I never
Right.
try to like
Exactly.
sway anybody one way or the other because I don't know. I'm a big believer of like I got to have counsel with God and God got to tell me
Yeah.
what he wants me to do, right? But sometimes the answer is go harder in the business. Sometimes the answer is continue to,
Take a
do
break.
what you need to do in the business, but maybe you need to, pick up that job because maybe that weight of that
Mm-hmm.
lack of income is inhibiting what you need to do
Yeah.
in the business,
Yeah.
right? But sit and thoughtfully make that decision and like
Mm-hmm.
block out whatever. If you don't pay my bills, you don't get a
Right.
vote. You
It's
do
true.
not get a vote. Like that was
You
like a running
don't.
joke with me and my grandmother because she called me and she'd say, "Yeah, I was talking to so and so, and whatever she wanted to say,
Mm-hmm.
so and so brought it up, right?" And I was just like, you know what? When you and so talk about this again, y'all let me know
Hmm.
which bill y'all about to pay. I said, because based on what bill you pay in my house,
Right. That'll
that's the
determine.
say so that you get in these
Yeah.
conversations. So, if you pay the light bill, you get a little say so. I say you pay the mortgage, you can say whatever you want,
Right.
whatever you want. But people don't have to live with your consequences, the consequences of your
Hmm.
choices. So make the choices that make sense for you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if that's going and getting a job and stacking some money,
Hmm.
go and
Hmm.
do it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely go and do it. Do what's in your personal best interest.
Yes, yes. And I love what you said too about because I'm similarly about sort of faith and letting God kind of lead me. And sometimes you may be surprised that like going to work at that job, like maybe that's not the right move, but it may connect you to a person who connects you to a contract, right? Like, And so you just never know. Like I always say, when I first in 2020, I was sort of dabbling in consulting. I didn't even reach out to my first main consulting job. I was just talking with a former CEO on LinkedIn, and I think she reached out because she probably knew people were probably not working because it was right in the middle of everybody going crazy. And she was just like, "Hey, what are you doing now?" I could have said, "Oh, I'm not available, blah, blah, blah." I was like, "Well, I'm, exploring some consulting things." I totally, told her what she needed to hear. And she was like, "Oh, really? Let's talk." And literally after that, it was like, she was like, "Well, can you do what you did when you worked for me?" And blah, blah, blah. And then we just basically rolled it out, and I ended up doing work with her for like probably 3 or 4 months, which ended up being amazingly helpful. And so you just never know, right? Like if I had been closed down to the opportunity, or if I thought she was only gonna, because I think initially she probably was trying to offer me a job, and I was like, no. But if I wasn't open, right, to having even
Right.
the conversation with her, you never know where it would have led. And that really was the Kickstarter that opened my eyes to be like, I could really do this because it sort of just started naturally fell out of what I was doing. And I think sometimes we are so closed off to things because we have such a rigid view of like, well, I said I was going to do it like this, and I want to be an entrepreneur, and I don't want anyone telling me what to do. And I mean, I'm all there for it. But sometimes there might be like a slight detour that's going to get you back to where you want to go. And we have to also be open to those places sometimes too.
Yeah, I've been sharing this like a lot recently. My grandmother used to always say, "That will be done."
Mm-hmm.
And a little backstory, my grandma was like very, very Baptist and she married a Catholic man and she converted to
Oh, wow.
Catholicism just to make it easier for the kids. But she was just
Hmm.
Baptist in a Catholic church, right? So like so like just 100%. I'm like, so you just gonna wear that big old hat. Like it, all right, that's what we doing. Okay. So that give you the kind of scope. And so I grew up and was raised Catholic by a Baptist woman. So,
Mm,
religiously
interesting.
confused. Um, but in the Catholic Church, they do the prayers of the faithful and they like,
Mm,
say what they request certain things and then there's a certain response that you're supposed to say back, depending
mm.
on whatever each week is, it might be different or whatever. Um a lot of times it's just Lord hear my prayers or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like, it sometimes it changes. But she would always say, "Thy will be done." And so one day I
Mm,
asked her about that. I was like, "Why do you say that?" And she said,
mm,
because it's not our place to tell God
yeah.
what to do.
Hmm.
And in the last like year of my life, it's never been more true that I
Hmm.
understand what she meant by that. And so while I may have like goals and aspirations or whatever, like that rigidness that you spoke about, like I'm like, I've let that fall because
Yeah.
what it's supposed to look like is none of my business. It's
Yeah.
absolutely none of my business. And when I yield to just, I'm going to do the things that I feel like God has said I should do. And
Hmm.
then, I'm going to see where that leads. When I've yielded to that, it's always different and more amazing than what I could have imagined.
Hmm.
So it that's so true that you just have to be flexible in that way that it may not look like what you think it should look like,
Hmm.
but odds are it's going to be much more grand than whatever you ever could
Yes. Yeah.
imagine, right? And we definitely have to be open to the universe and where it wants to take us because there's a lot of things that I'm like, if you told me, 10 years ago, however
Hmm.
many, I'd have been like, no, that's not.
Yeah.
That don't even sound
True.
right. Like,
Hmm.
like that's not a thing.
It's so true.
But we do have to learn how to embrace and how to be open-minded, be just always looking and seeing and embracing whatever is coming our way. So I love
Hmm.
that you shared that like that. I'm not no longer using the word accidental. So on my panel episode earlier, um one of the ladies said that she stopped using the word accidental because she was like, that's a
Mm,
disservice to God. Like it was not an
yeah,
accident. It might
yeah.
feel like it to us, but it was very
Intentional, yeah.
intentional and a part of the process. But you just fall into places.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you really
Totally.
embrace and have that faith, you just fall into places and you're like, I don't know how that like I know
Happened.
what happened and how that happened, but okay. Like we're here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's funny you say it because so much of even this past year, I think was a perfect, like if you had asked me, not even probably three, maybe even not even 2 years ago, but definitely probably not 3 or 4 years ago, if I would be teaching people how to trade stocks or how to like build a business, I would have been like, absolutely not. Like, what are you even talking about? And all of last year, at the beginning of last year, I heard God say to me, like, this is going to be your year, sort of more joy, more ease, um, and more fun. And I thought it was like, okay, well, now I'm going to be able to be in a business, right, or in a role in a job that's more easy, more fun. And I just couldn't get myself like focused on anything. I just kept feeling like, I don't know, do I want to do this? And the only thing that I wanted to do was actually go deeper into investing and trading all these things. And it literally just became this phenomena. And then I started telling people what was happening. And all of a sudden, everyone was like, well, can you show me what you're doing? And I started to have all these people be like, show me what you're doing. How are you doing that? Can you teach me this? And I was like, is this what people mean when they're like, people come and ask you, and then you have to roll into things? And so I feel like it's the very same thing. I had been fighting for so long. I was like, I don't really teach. I don't really want to be responsible for teaching people things. And I feel like every single thing I've ever been like, I don't know if that's really me. God's like, no, yeah, yeah, come on. I'm gonna put you right there, right in the middle of it. And then, you just sort of let it happen. And now that is exactly what has happened. And so I totally believe in that, like allowing God to just guide you, letting him know where you want to go, letting him see what you're working towards, and then just being open to the journey and the path and how he moves you through it. And that has been that has been my life in so many different ways.
It's so funny to me. So just like I said, I have not yet met a person who has had a linear journey, right? I've also, I'm not gonna say I haven't met a person, but it's just so common that myself included, that we have run from the thing. Cause I feel
Mhm.
like God had been like, you supposed to be a coach like a bunch of times. And I was like, nah, friend, that's not it. Like
It's not it. Yeah.
that's not it. I think you confused. There's a lot of people named
Yep.
Danielle. You got the wrong one. It's
Hmm.
okay.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm like, but it just kept coming back around, and it's just like, oh, okay, all right. I
Hmm.
will yield. Like I will,
I know. I
I
know.
will
I'm like, all
yield.
right, I will obey.
But
I
I'm
get
like,
it.
but it's the thing that brings me the most like joy,
Hmm.
like as far as like professional wise, it's like the thing that like consistently, no matter where I'm at or what I'm doing, like, I've had times where I was like sick as a dog and I
Hmm.
had a call that night, or, I had a podcast interview or whatever it was. And like for that time period that I was doing that thing, I did not
Yeah.
remember that I didn't feel well or that I was
Hmm.
having a bad
Hmm.
day, or so yes, definitely, y'all, if y'all fighting something, just yield. You just making it take
I
longer.
know.
You just because
Just
because he not
surrender.
gonna
That's been my
stop. He
thing.
not gonna stop
Surrender
bothering
and
you.
obey. I know there's what a same coach, but she has this sort of thing she calls it like I think it's the pebble, then the rock, then the boulder, right? And so like she's like all of us sometimes we get this like there's like a little pebble, you get this little thing and you're like, maybe that's interesting, but I don't know if that's for me, right? And then God will be like, I said, and then he'll like
Right.
throw the rock, and then you're like, oh, okay, all right. I mean, I hear you, but I'm not sure. And then it's the boulder, right? So sometimes it's like Maybe it's your job, maybe it's your computer breaks down, maybe it's your car. They're just I'm like I'm not waiting for the boulders.
No, I
Now
don't even
I'm
like
like
that. Like,
at the
cause
pebble, I'm moving.
look, just look, just pebble me now because I
Mhm.
mean,
Exactly.
cause them boulders be
They'll take you out. They'll take you out for
like,
a
bruh,
minute.
like we doing this, like that was mean. Like, why would you do
Yeah.
this?
That was too
But he's
much.
like, I couldn't get your attention. You want to be distracted. So now I have to take drastic measures. Like, yeah,
Yes,
don't
yes.
do it, y'all. Just
Don't wait for the
sit with
boulder.
them pebbles and just sit and just try to line them up and figure out what they're saying to you because
Exactly.
look, I can't take no
Yes.
more boulders. I'm not
Mm-mm.
look,
And
I
sometimes
don't
we'll
have it in
drag it
me.
out, right? Because I was like, I
I
know, I heard it. I'm moving, but like
I
I
don't
was
have it
taking my
in me.
time.
Like
And he was
I
like,
do not
I
have it
didn't
in
say
me.
forever. I said now.
No,
Mm.
definitely. So I want to make sure we give a little time before we leave for just to talk about like your journey with investing and stocks and
Yes.
how that can create that runway for whether you're entrepreneur or employed, how you can create a runway via investing.
Yes. So it's a huge topic because I think investing right now is probably becoming a little bit more of a buzz. I feel like for a lot of time people didn't talk as much about investing. And there's so many ways to invest. So what I always say is number one, just start investing, right? If you like real estate, start investing in real estate. If you like stocks, start investing in stocks. I will say I personally believe it's a little bit easier to get started investing in stocks with a little bit less money, right? To really get invested in real estate and really start to see those returns, you do kind of have to have a little bit of money to get started. Um, but for me, I mean, I think everything has right, there's a scale or a trajectory.
Hmm.
So the first one I think most of us probably maybe do or don't, right? If you have your job, you're probably investing in a 401k or 403b, whatever that might be. And that is great, but I always say like go deeper. Like actually understand what are you investing in, right? Are these the right things to be investing in? Are they going to grow like is it going to take you forever to actually make some money in that? And the other thing to realize is anything in your retirement, you can't really touch. I mean, you could touch, right? But you have to take money out. And so I really started to think about, for me, I had always been thinking about retirement, right? I always put money into my 401k. I was like, okay, let me do all the things for retirement. But if you are considering pivoting and making a switch, if you want runway, you're going to need money that you can actually access on your own. And so getting into investing, whether it can be, I would say sort of starting off initially, just opening your own brokerage account and just investing in stocks is probably step one. Then I went from there and I learned how to trade stocks, right? So that's basically investing. If you think about real estate, which is the other thing I love, is there's buy and hold real estate, right? Where you buy something and you hold it forever and you never sell it. And then there's like flip and fix real estate, right? You guys have probably seen it all on HGTV, where people buy something, make money on it really fast, and then sell it and then take the profits, right?
Hmm.
Trading stocks is kind of like fix and flip, and investing is kind of like buy and hold, right? You're going to buy
Gotcha. Yeah.
something. Let's say you decide you want to buy Amazon, and then you're just going to hold that thing forever. And over time, right, the stock market has always consistently moved up and to the right. And so I always tell everybody you should always have that where like to me where the core of your money is. The majority of my money is in long-term investing. And so it's really important to understand the fundamentals of investing. But then I think as you start to get more comfortable, as you build up a little bit more of your confidence and your money, moving into trading is a great way to trade for income. And so I actually moved from trading stocks to what's called trading options. It can get really complicated, but options trading just allows you to trade pretty much those same stocks, but in a much larger quantity for a lot cheaper price, which sounds really good, right? It's like being able to trade more at a discount. But it is a lot riskier and it moves a lot faster. But literally, that sort of became my income stream after I left my job, like it was able to bring in more than I was making in my job every month just by doing a few hours of trading, not every day, but probably at least a week. And so to me, that was such a game changer because it's something that I don't have to do a marketing funnel for. I don't have to come up with an offer for, right? Like the stock market is open 5 days out of the week, so I get weekends off. It's open from 9:30 to 4, and I was like, these hours are perfect. And the other thing that I would say is there are ways to trade whether you do work a full-time job and you have very little time, and so you just need something that's kind of like a buy and hold, but that allows you to get income a little bit more faster. Or if you have a lot more flexibility, right, you can trade more actively, right? You can trade more during the day. And so it's very similar to real estate, right? Like you can be very involved in real estate and you could be the person who's cleaning the toilets and doing all the things, or you can be a little bit more passive and you can have something that runs kind of longer term on its own with long-term tenants. But I would say of all of the things that I have learned in my life, being able to understand investing for myself, right? So not having to rely on an external person to tell me what to do has been a game changer because I don't ever feel as if I can't produce money if I really needed to, right? Like, and so I think going back to our conversation around desperation, I'm always probably want to continue trading. I've shifted from spending all of my time trading during this probably most of this past year to a slower pace of it so I can actually put more energy towards the business. But I think that really is to me about kind of being this luxuriously fulfilled because having this way to make money that is a little bit easier allows me to maintain a life and a lifestyle while I look and I pursue ways to help other people, right? Where I can do work that really helps me be fulfilled. And I'm not as worried about, oh, well, is this going to make enough money? And do I need to make sure that I'm pricing this right so that I can pay the bills next month, right? And so it just gives you a little bit more of that ease and that flexibility. So I know that was a lot. So let me know if you
No,
want me
no,
to
no. It
break
was
any of those
good.
pieces
It was
down.
good though. It was so I got follow-up questions because
Yeah.
I got follow-up questions. All right. So yeah, I have done like the stocks like, just kind of like buy and hold, type of thing or
Yep.
whatever. I like was in a couple of like trading groups. My hair was spinning. Like I was like, I'm like, yeah, it was a little
Yeah.
stressful. It was a little stressful.
Yeah.
If I'm being completely honest, it was a little
Yes.
stressful. So I guess my question is, what are your tips for somebody who is trying to enter into that space of
Yeah.
trading, but they really don't know. They don't know what they're doing, and maybe they don't want it to like trigger their anxiety.
Well, I will say number one is learn, right? I think lots of like I have so many friends who are like, yeah, I sort of dabbled in this app. Like you can't dabble in options, right? You gotta learn how to do it and have a system to do it. And so I always say number one, actually learn it. Don't try to shortcut it because you will shortcut all your money and lose all your money. Number one. Number two, I always say like trading, I think has now become sort of a bigger term. I don't think people knew much about it before, but there's like thousands of ways to trade. Whenever people think of trading, they think of day trading, right? Day trading is probably the most risky, the fastest pace, the most anxiety driven way to do it. But you don't have to do day trading because essentially what happens in day trading is you are trying to get in and get out of something in the same day and hope that everything is going right and everything is going in the direction that you want it to go in. But you can also buy things that are kind of like buy and hold, right? That have a much longer time horizon, right? Like one, two, as much as 6 months out if you want, where literally you just have to check and see if it's doing okay. Maybe like once a day, maybe even once a week. you can set alerts in, you can preset things so that as soon as it hits the amount of money that you want to make, it'll get you out. And if you lose a certain amount of money, it'll get you out. Like there's ways to make it way less anxiety driven. But that's where I go back to. It really does depend on your goals and what you're trying to do. And so I always say to people, it's not like there's one set of trading and this is the way to do it and this is the only way to do it. I actually prefer a light, more slower paced version of it because you'll gain slower, but you'll also lose slower, right? And I
Yeah,
think most of us think about trading as like, oh my gosh, how much money can I make? When really the thing about trading is how much money can I save? Like, can I not lose?
right,
And if you don't lose money, that's a win, right? Even if you don't make a ton of money. But lots
right.
of times people get so caught up in like, well, I got to make all this money. I got to make all this money. That's going to probably be a recipe for disaster. So thinking about what's the best way that I can make sure that I don't lose money. And so I teach people a little bit more of what I call almost like a medium term or like a midterm strategy, where it's not quite as long as a buy and hold where you're never going in, but it's not trying to day trade because most people are not going to have the time or the energy or the honestly or the patience to be able to do it
Like
without
I
feeling like they're
I
losing all
never
their
did it
head.
because I was just like y'all wake up early in the morning and then y'all just going. Like it just felt like everybody was on like level 10 and I was just
Like no.
like I don't know what like y'all taking. Like y'all on something. Y'all gotta be. And I just woke up. Like I just woke up.
Right?
Like I'm not a morning person. I just woke up. I
I'm
feel
not
like y'all
either.
all screaming at me, and then y'all
Oh
like
God, what
arguing
kind of group
over,
was this?
like I'm like,
Wow.
what's
Yeah, that's an
happening? Like,
intense group. I'm not
so
that.
I'm glad to hear that there's like another option because it's like that is like a full-time job in and of itself. Like just
Yeah,
the
it's too
day
much.
trading, and I met me before. I'm not That's not good for my mental health. Let's just say it
No,
like
it's
that.
not. And most people are going to lose money day trading. And so it's super, super high risk. But the fundamentals that you learn can apply across any spectrum, right? And so I think that's the most important thing is if you understand how to find good companies, if you understand when to get into a trade and when to get out of a trade, whether you decide to trade over a year or you decide to trade over a day, the fundamentals are pretty much the same. But you have to understand like where is my risk tolerance and what kind of time, right, do you have? Because most people don't have enough time to be kind of in the market and watching it every minute and making sure it's not going crazy. And I think whenever I tell people about trading, they're like, am I gonna have to be looking at a screen all day and charting? And I love it, so it's okay, but you don't have to be, right? And so I think that's another thing to keep in mind too.
Yeah, I definitely love that idea because just to expand this outside of like the world of like trading in general, I think that, we see people making money doing a thing and we don't think about the amount of time, energy,
Mm-hmm.
efforts that they are putting into
100%.
doing
Yes.
that thing. Like anything can be wildly profitable
Yep.
or, costly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it really depends on like, because even like if you think about like influencing and like, like monetizing your page and stuff like that, that is a thing. But like
Mm-hmm.
people who are taking home big paychecks, they treat it like a job.
Yes, yes, yes. That's very true.
So it's just like we talked about earlier with those different streams of income, you have to be realistic as well about the
Mm-hmm.
amount of
Mm-hmm.
time that you can put into it. Not saying that you can't make money off of it, because like you said, you
Right,
can get
right.
those stocks that you hold and they just sitting over there doing what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking to be in that like, big money, fast move, then you have to pay attention because again, like I never jumped in. It was like double dutch. I was just watching I was just watching it and I never jumped in.
Yeah.
Um, but like just watching it happen, like, people all over this thing this morning and this
Mhm.
afternoon, they like, "Dear, I hope you got out, because if you didn't get out, and somebody like, oh, my meeting ran long. Like, you just lost all this money because you
Oh
like, you
my
know what I'm saying? Like, I'm
gosh.
like, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no.
Yeah. No,
Like, that's
I
not
totally
for
agree.
me. But that doesn't mean it's not for someone else. But I love that you teach and talk about that middle ground of, hey,
Hmm.
you can still do this at your own pace. It may not be as lucrative, but it also may not be as risky.
Right, right. And that's the thing, right? Because there's always going to be a risk reward trade-off, right? And so you're going to be maybe willing to risk more, right? You'll make more, but you risk more, right? And so you also have to know how much do you have to play with, right? I think that's another big thing. The reason why most people, I think, end up getting hurt is because they want to have this huge reward, but they don't have actually the money to be able to build up to get there. And I think the other thing that you said that I thought was really interesting is it's about consistency, right? And I feel like that's been my biggest, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's business, whatever it is, right? Consistency is so much more closely connected to success than whatever the, strategy is or whatever the thing is. Like there's so many ways to make money. And I think that's probably been the biggest eye opener for me in the last probably 3 or 4 years is many of us were kind of taught, well, the only way to be super successful and be able to have the life that we want was to go into corporate and kind of work your way up the ladder, right? Or to be this wildly successful, multi-million dollar business. But there's so many ways to go about doing it, right? Like I think Instagram is a perfect example. You will find 100,000 different ways that people are making money, but I think at the end of the day, the people who are successful are just consistent with whatever way they decided to go in on. And I think circling back even to our 7 streams of income, if you can't be consistent and committed to all 7 of those, the likelihood of success rate is going to be small. And so, how can you just figure out what's that thing that I enjoy doing that I would do even if I wasn't getting paid? I mean, I would still want to get paid, but
Right.
even if I wasn't, right? Like, and how can I just go hard on that skill and really learn that thing and get better and better and better and better at it? And I think, and know that you're going to fall. Like, the number one thing I say to people all the time is if you do investing, if you do trading, you will lose money. Guaranteed. I can't, that's the only thing I can guarantee. I can probably guarantee you'll lose money more than I can guarantee you'll make money. But with time and consistency, you'll make more money than you lose, right? And that's really the way to think about it. And I think it's similar with business. It's similar with a lot of things. Like there will be times when you're going to fail. You just need to have more successes than your failures, right? And that's what's going to propel you forward and get you to keep moving. So that's kind of where I am, at least with that for now.
So I love what you said about, like, there are times where you're gonna fail, right? And I think, regardless of what we're speaking about, we need to be comfortable with that failure. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you think about it, like in the investing world, well, you can't win if you're not comfortable with losing. You have to,
Yes.
it's, I hate to use that word, but it's a gamble, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you have to be willing to lose to win.
Yes.
And I think that
Yes.
that's like true in every facet of life. Like if
It
you are
is.
not open to the loss,
Mm-hmm.
you can't really truly succeed and win, because you're going to be operating from a space that's not full or complete. You're
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah.
operating from like this very limited space, because this is the space that I can win
Mm-hmm.
in.
That's so true.
And so, I'm just, yeah, that's just sitting on me right now. Like, cause you have to
Yeah.
be open to that.
You do.
And we
Yeah.
will, we all fail. We all have failures. You can ask your favorite, entrepreneur, and they will have list of stories of things that was like,
Exactly.
so this one time, you know, We
Yep,
all have
yep.
that list. We don't, it's not going to be on our website or on our, like, necessarily on our
Hmm.
social media, but we all have that list of things that we failed at. And so, being open to that and, removing the fear from it, right? Removing the
Yes,
fear of,
yes.
you know, failing from the equation so that you can reach your upper limits.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, I like to say like, investing has so many um metaphors or like lessons, right, for life because so many of the same everything you just said, it's they're all similar and true, right? And I think if we and I've even said that to myself sometimes of like, you got to think about the business just like how I think about investing. Because it's easier for me to be like, okay, right, like it's going to dip a little before it comes back around, right? And so you just sort of get used to this yin and yang, right? You get used to the uncertainty, but your certainty in, nope, this is what I wanted to do. This is what I heard God tell me to do. And so much of it is you got to be patient, right? Like there's so much of investing, especially if you're
Whew.
doing more longer term because you'll look and you're like, oh my gosh, it's going down, right? But like if you trust what you did, right? You trust the work that you've done, you trust the process that you put together, and then slowly you'll watch, right? Because there, I mean, I can't even tell you the amount of times when I've gotten out of something so fast because I was like, oh my gosh, it's not going that direction. And then you got scared. And if I had just waited like one more hour, one more day, right, it would have done what I thought it was going to do. And so there is so much to learning how to control yourself,
Mm,
right? Like learning how to control your own emotions, how to be able to make decisions and cut your losses, right? I think that's another big part of it is you're
yeah.
gonna fail, but there are some times when like don't just keep holding on because you're
Right.
like, well, I really, really am hoping that this. Nope, it's all right. Cut your losses and pivot, right? If it's going down, we're gonna cut and we're gonna buy something in the other direction because now you can read what's happening. And so there's a lot of the same, I would say, like life lessons and
Mm-hmm.
definitely entrepreneurial lessons that I think apply because so much of what will make you a good investor, I think also applies and helps in business and obviously probably vice versa. And actually, honestly, in life, there's just a lot of things that are, I think, universal truths in the world. And the more we see that play out, I think that just helps in everything that I've been doing too. So I do sometimes say that to myself, like, see, you weren't being patient. And this is just like what happened to you when you weren't patient. And learning from those mistakes, right? Like I
Yeah.
would say the biggest thing, especially in investing, is most of my growth has come from looking at things and being like, oh, like, well, that's why that didn't work well, right? I didn't follow my formula. I didn't follow the steps. But realizing, oh, when this happens, this is what happens, right? And that's why consistency I think does equal success because, when you're looking at the market, so much of it is looking at patterns, right? It's pattern recognition. And the more you do something, the easier it is to see a pattern, right? The
Yeah.
easier it is for you to build your confidence. And I think that's the same thing, whether you're selling a product, whether you're singing on a stage, right? The more you do something, you start to notice patterns, you start to notice what works for me, what doesn't work for me. And that's what builds the expertise and that's what builds your confidence. So they all are a part of it. That's all how it comes together, 100%.
So these were my takeaways from that. One, of course, consistency. And I truly believe what you said, like consistency is, the greatest indicator of success.
Hmm.
Um, Two, I it fits here, but like I've spoken about this a lot, like recently, sunken costs. You know,
Yeah,
sometimes that money is spent, that situation is
it's gone.
gone, the time,
Yeah.
whatever it was, it's over.
Yeah.
You can't get it back. Don't keep throwing, good money or
More
good
at it.
time,
Yep.
good energy behind bad. Like cut
Hmm.
your losses when you need to cut your losses.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and then the other thing that I took from that was just the importance of long-term thinking. So
Hmm.
I see that a lot where, you're making those like kind of knee-jerk decisions, or I call them panic pivots.
Yep. Yep.
Sometimes in life we do need to pivot, but sometimes we need to just stay the course. And we have to
Yes.
learn the difference that just because something is uncomfortable
Hmm.
doesn't mean that it's time to, completely. change
Yeah.
course. We got to go back to what was the original plan and
Hmm.
why was this the plan? Has anything changed that
Yeah.
should
Yep.
make this not be the plan? And if nothing's changed, then we just need to stay the course and see it through and not, those panic pivots, take you down like some whole other road that was never supposed to be a part of your journey, and you
Yeah.
really could have
Yeah.
just stayed focused and seen it through. So yeah, I got all of that from
I love that you said it because even just this year, one of the things that I feel like my word for this year is growth. And one of the things that I feel like is the main growth area is not taking maybe it's hardship or I'm trying to think like the right word, almost like challenges as a sign that God wants me to stop.
yeah,
And lots of times we think, well, if God really wants me to do it, it's going to be easy, it's going to be smooth, it's going to go great. And sometimes that's true. And sometimes it's not. And I feel like God's like, I want to see how much you have faith in what I told you, right? Like, how much can
that's
you see
it.
this through? How much can you keep persevering? And he's like, sounds all great. Sometimes he'll like grease the wheels for us to get started, but then he's like, now it's on you. I want you to kind of go on faith. And I think that's just such an interesting to your point around sometimes when we see things not going our way, we're like, oh my gosh, we gotta pivot, we gotta, abandon ship. And it's like, no, maybe this just means you gotta like go really refine the strategy, right? Make sure that you're being really clear on why you want to do this. And so I think that is very powerful of just getting to a place of it's not sometimes it is pivot, right? But sometimes
Mhm.
it's not. Sometimes it's just get more focused and get more determined in what you're going after too.
So in a similar way, so like my 2024, so my mantra going into 2024 was that I was gonna stop playing in God's face, right? So
Mm.
yeah. hmm I played a little bit. I didn't play a lot, but maybe a little bit, right? If we being honest, but I did much better. But
Hmm.
you brought up the whole idea of faith, and I feel like the lesson that I learned in 2024 was peace be still.
Mm. Hmm.
So it wasn't a year without challenges by any
Hmm.
stretch of the
Hmm.
imagination, but I learned to sit in it and just
Hmm.
understand that as long as I keep checking back in with him and making sure that I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing, that right now the journey is about me being comfortable
Hmm.
in the uncomfortable because
Hmm.
my faith is that he has my back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that has been, ooh, that's been a journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's kind of where I am. And it's kind of funny. I was having a conversation with my husband the other day, and he was like stressing about something. And he was like, I just been thinking about like, I said something to him about it. And he was like, I've been thinking about what you said about just, I don't know how it's going to work out, but it's going to work out. And so he's
Mm-hmm.
like trying to like process that himself or whatever. And so I'm like, so not only am I like navigating this, but I also, I guess, am in like exuding this, like, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just, I don't always know the answers, but there have been so many unexpected or random answers that have
Mm-hmm.
appeared. And so I know
Yeah.
that I have to continue down the path, and
Yeah.
stay
Yeah.
focused and understand that it's going to work out even if it doesn't, you know, my grandmother loved James Cleveland. He had that, song Peace Be Still, and it's like actually like
Mm-hmm.
even the vocals of it dramatize that, because they have like the
Yeah.
little quiet part and they have all of like the
Mm-hmm.
crescendo and all of that. And it's like whatever is going on around me, I still have to remain
Peace.
peaceful. And
Yeah.
so, just saying that to say like just reiterating, the challenge does not mean
Mm-mm.
that you've gone the wrong way. The challenge is to prepare you for the further down the road.
Yeah, yeah. What's to come? Yeah,
It's
yeah.
yeah, for what's to come because God said I'm not about to open my whole abundance to you and you still playing.
Right. It's true, right? Like he's not gonna
You
give it all, but you're not ready to hold it. You're just gonna
right. I
drop
mean,
it.
like I could just drop it on the ground if we just doing that. I mean, I need to know
Yeah.
that you're ready for this because
Hmm.
I have greater for you, but you have to be greater to receive it.
Mm-hmm. I wholeheartedly believe that. Because that I feel like even when I remember when I was first trying to get all my finances together and I was trying everything. Like I was selling things on Amazon, I was doing I was doing all of the things. And I was like, God, like, why won't you just give me more money? And he was like, what are you doing with what you have?
Right.
And I was like, oh. And I was
Like we
like,
want to talk
I
about
was
that.
all over the place, right?
We
And
want to talk
so
about that. Okay.
exactly. And I think, and that, like, that has stuck with me so hard because anytime I'm always like, oh, but I want more. And he's like, what are you doing with what you have, right? If you want a bigger house, he's like, what are you doing with the house that you have right now? And so I think that is just, it's so true in every way. Like, he's always going to make sure you actually have those skills and the foundations and the ability to handle what's the next, flow that he wants to give you. And I think that we think that that's like this punishment, but it's actually grace. It's actually really good for us.
No, because I mean, who wants to get it and then fumble the bag? Like
It's
that's
true, because that hurts way more.
right. You know what I'm saying? God, you gave me this, and I just was like, my bad. Look,
Yeah.
you got a little bit more of that money up there.
Anything else
Cause
you can drop
I
down?
bought a unicorn, and I mean, I just got excited. Um,
It's
so
true. It's so true.
let's do it again. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
but that's the reality. It's like
It is.
we have to prepare for what we want to
Yeah. Yeah.
receive. And
100%.
that is going through those challenges instead of going around them or, opening
Hmm.
that third business. Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
one and two didn't.
I didn't make it all three. Oh no, it didn't add up. That's
Right.
true.
Like just let's just circle back to where, and like you said,
Hmm.
like learning from those lessons, like, in investing
Yes.
and in life, learning from those lessons. So, maybe one and two didn't work for a reason, but what's that
Hmm.
reason? So that when you enter into three, you're not
Yep.
making the same mistakes again.
Over and over again. Yep.
You're starting from a different level, a different level of
Totally.
wisdom, of understanding.
Yeah, I think that's true. And because I feel like so many times we take the wrong lesson or like we take the big lesson like, oh, that was just wrong. Like, well, no, maybe that was right, but it was the wrong time, right? Or maybe that was right, but it was with the wrong people. And so we gotta get a little bit more granular to make sure that we're actually learning the full lesson so that when it is in the right space, we're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And we don't just dismiss it because it's like, oh, well, we already tried that. So that can't be it. Because I was queen of that. I was like, no, well, that can't be it. I already tried it, didn't work. But it's like, no, it was working. It just wasn't in the way that you were doing it the first time.
Right. Like, yeah, because it's like sometimes you needed to do something different. Sometimes it's just you weren't being patient.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was right around the corner, but you gave up before,
Too
it
soon.
got
Yep.
there.
Yep.
And then, sometimes, like you said, maybe you weren't with the right people. God was like, no, no, no.
That's right.
I don't rock with this. I don't. Look, God said, who
Yeah,
all over there?
exactly. He was like, I told you, not all of
I
these
didn't say
people.
this was not a group
Mm-mm.
project. This was a solo project
That's
between
what,
me and you
that's
and
right.
who invited them people. I'm a dip. I'm gonna come back when you ready to have this
You ready?
conversation.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's real. I think that is real. That's
All
so
right, I'm
true.
gonna wrap up because I know we can keep going. We can definitely keep going. And I definitely want to get some more insights on trading in that world, but I love how you shaped this for this
Yep.
conversation for us to just have some more to think about, especially as regarding that runway. and it's going to look
Yes,
different for
yes.
different people, but
100%.
give yourself that space. It doesn't have to be this stressful thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like my personal recent runway, I'm transitioning a little bit more into the coaching than the balloon business. And in my mind, it was like, shut this off so that I could focus on this.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I was like, but my light bill due.
Right.
And sometimes, and I mean, I always advise people, coaches have coaches, have
Yes.
outside counsel to help guide you along the process. And
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
I went to a retreat and I was talking to the lady, her topic was on money, and we were talking, and she was actually a past guest on the podcast, Lucretia. So go back and watch her
Mm.
episode. But just in that 5 minutes we was talking, and she was like, so you can't keep doing this until you got,
Right?
and I was like, I felt both empowered and dumb all in the same moment. And I was like, you're right. You
Yeah, that's
absolutely right.
true.
But it's less pressure. And like
Hmm.
again, back to that idea of desperation, not appearing in that way as you're trying to do something that really is your, like, your joy, your fulfillment. You don't
Yeah,
want to put
yeah.
that vibe on
That's
it.
true. That's true. Yeah, yeah.
But it gives you that runway. So it could be, something else that you do that might not be your passion work, but it's work.
Hmm.
It's getting those
Hmm.
bills paid, or investing, or a 9 to 5, whatever it is that's going to give you that runway. So I love this conversation. So as we wrap up, I'm gonna ask you our wrap up questions, and then I'm gonna give you
Okay.
an opportunity to share what you're working on and what you want to share with the audience. So my first wrap up question is, tell me about your favorite pajamas.
I am so bad at pajamas. But I think my favorite pajamas are a pants set. They're like cotton, but they're very soft and light because I tend to get hot while I'm sleeping. And I think those are probably my favorite just because they're just so easy and they're probably from Target because I love them. But they're just like comfortable and simple. I'm not sure if I can say that on here, but yes.
No, you can. Yeah,
Okay.
I love Target pajamas. They have that one line that's just like soft, like
Yeah, it's like super
yes.
soft and it's not really heavy. Yeah, those are my favorite for sure.
Yeah, I'm not a big like, well, I'm in New Orleans, so I can't wear is
Oh,
we can't
yeah.
do hot pajamas. Like that's just not gonna happen. And yeah, and then I'm reaching that age where, night times is hot.
I
So
know.
I'm like cold natured naturally, but at night I'm like, oh God, God,
I
why? Like
know.
I'm trying to get
That's
all the
too
hair off my
much.
neck. Like, yeah,
I
no.
know. I know. It's crazy. But yeah, their pajamas are probably the best for that.
Yeah, they have some very comfortable pajamas. Okay, my time freedom allows me to.
My time freedom allows me to spend more engaged time with my daughter.
Mm,
And I say engaged because like I probably spend the same amount, but I was always mentally distracted or like always
hmm.
trying to work while talking to her or, fit things in all the time. And so I definitely feel like I have been able to focus more on what she needs. But it's also given me tons of times to just reconnect with all the things I enjoy, which sometimes is being by myself. Which sometimes is traveling, which sometimes is hanging out with my friends. And that I feel like has been like the biggest eye opener for me. It's just like how much of those things I had let go of and almost been like, well, it's okay. So that definitely is probably the biggest one.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like when I quit my job, I realized that I was not as present as I thought that I was.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like when you said that about the time with your daughter, like I'm like, I thought like I thought it was like, we was
Yeah,
jamming, and
I
then
was like, I do everything with you.
right. And then I was just like, just something as simple as like being able, at that time my son was in elementary school. Now he's in college. That's weird. But
Wow.
I know, right? But
Crazy.
like just being able to pick him up after school and like that conversation in the car on the way home
Hmm.
was totally different than the conversation when I picked him up from aftercare because
Yeah, yeah.
then we're both exhausted and nobody wants to talk. Like, we're just like, it's over. Like,
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
was just a different level of presence. And so I
Hmm.
really like that.
Hmm. Yes.
So, what is your best advice for anyone that's seeking the profits in pajamas lifestyle?
Slightly biased. I would say my best advice would be start investing. Um, but I would say get really clear on what that life looks like. Sometimes I feel like, the people throw around financial freedom and time freedom. Um, but sometimes you're like, yeah, but what would you actually do? I
Right,
feel like
right,
I even struggled. I was like, I don't know. I wouldn't be working, but it's like, yeah, but you still have to do something. And so I would say like actually figure out what you're like one of the exercises I do with some of the people I coach who are starting a business is like, what is your perfect day? Like actually think about what would you do? Are you working with people? Are you by yourself? Because I think the idea of retiring at like 45 sounds amazing, but then I'm like, what do you do with the rest of your time? Like after a certain
right,
point, you might want to be doing something. Um, and so I always say, like, yes, I love the idea of profits in pajamas, but like, what does that actually look like? What does your day actually look like?
yeah,
And then figure out how close or how far you are away from that and how you can start to close the gap.
yeah. I do a similar exercise when we talk about success. Like, what does success look like? Like, what does
Mhm.
that day to day look like? And that's a struggle. I mean, it was a
It
struggle for
is.
me when I first did it myself, and it's a struggle for a lot of people because, unfortunately, we don't think about it.
We don't. We don't.
We really don't think about it. So, just listening audience, start putting some thought into that. Like,
Hmm.
what are the things that bring you joy? What are the things that you
Yeah.
would want your day to be filled with?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, like, probably those first few days you just want to go to sleep or go on a vacation or, whatever,
Yeah, and you should.
like,
Yeah.
but then, that next day,
Yeah, yeah. Because it's so hard. I mean, I know this is supposed to be fast questions, but like I think the hardest part was I had spent so much of my life having like these external factors control my day that like when none of that was there, I was like, I don't know what to do with my day, right? So like it took me so long just to get to like, okay, well, I want to do this on Mondays and I want this to be my Tuesdays and on Wednesday, like but that was just like it was just like it was a process. And so I always say like just literally actually think about it. What would freedom look like? As opposed to just getting to the freedom and then it's like, oh, I don't know. So,
right. Yeah, no, I think that that's great. Like to think about it that way. Like, what does it look like? I think it also helps us to get there. Like, in the
yeah.
sense of like a lot of people don't believe that it can be a thing because
Hmm.
society tells us that it can't, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that when you start really mapping it out and visualizing it, it's kind of like manifestation. Like you have to see it before you can actually
Hmm.
do it. But once you start seeing, wait, it could be like this. Like I
Yeah.
could,
Yeah.
work these hours and then like, go, to the park with my child. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or I could, do a morning run,
Yep.
before
Yep.
I start my day. When I control my day, I don't have to start my day at 8 o'clock.
Right. Exactly.
I can set those
Exactly.
hours. You still have to have that realism of like getting stuff
Structure and
done,
routine. Yeah. Yeah.
but you get to pick how that
Comes
plays
together.
out. And
Hmm.
I don't know, I just love just the feeling of knowing that you have that type of control.
And creating the type of business that aligns with what you actually want, right? Because other times we
Yes.
just like go into stuff and it's like, well, why would I have signed up to do this when I don't want to work all weekend, And so I think just being really mindful of that because otherwise you put yourself right back in the same trap you were trying to get out of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like that I wholeheartedly, because I'm like, I believe in holistic success, but you can't have holistic success unless you look at all the parts when
Yes.
you
Yes.
make decisions. And so like I've been in situations where I'm like, okay, in this one part of me wants to, like, let's say like a financial goal in,
Hmm.
my balloon business, I want to take it to here. And then when I really sat down and looked at it collectively, I'm like,
This ain't
so
gonna
look,
work.
if I do
Yeah.
that, then I won't be able to do all these other
Hmm.
things over here. And so, I'm cool with it being here instead of here
Right.
because I get benefits, like it's kind of like
And
at
all these
work,
other
you have your whole
areas.
benefits package. I get these
Mm.
other benefits here that
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
I go here, those are going away and those are non-negotiable. So like
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah. That's
helps you
real.
to, make those decisions and be thoughtful about why those numbers even matter. Like cuz we just pull them numbers out the sky like,
Hmm.
I need to be making, X figures, but
Do you?
is that is that like you said
Yeah.
in alignment with what I view success as? Like,
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
that going to take away? Does that mean that now I'm, working 80 hours and I no
Right.
longer get to see my child? Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
how does that go? So I love that. All right. So how do people get in touch with you? And is there anything that you are offering that's going on that you want the audience to know about?
So the easiest way to get in touch with me is to find me on Instagram at the Independent Mom. But you can also go to my website, which is just my name. It's Arielle Deane, which is always hard for people to spell. So, but it's ARIELLEDEANE.com. And that's where everything that I'm doing, as well as the podcast, you can link to all of those things. And so coming soon, although it's not sort of out yet, but we'll be doing kind of an investing and then separately a trading sort of intensive. I'm calling it because it's not like a big long course. It'll be like a day sort of thing just to get people, one, get you started investing and really thinking about investing and understanding how to invest. Because I find a lot of people are investing, but couldn't tell you what they were invested in or like how to know if it's the right thing. And then for people who actually do want to go a little bit further, thinking about and doing trading. So those are the two main things. So look out for those. But if you're on the website or on Instagram, you'll see when those come out. So hold tight for those.
So awesome. So I want you guys to go and follow. I'm going to have all of that information in the show notes. I want you to go and follow and keep up with this because everybody's, looking for ways, especially right now, to, increase their revenue, to be in positions where we have runways. Unfortunately, I just feel like the economy is tight and it's gonna get tighter before it gets looser.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, if
It
we're being
is.
real. And so, with that being the case, we really, really, really need to be much more strategic and much more focused on giving ourselves those runways because you don't know
Yes.
what's going to happen or how things are going to unfold, but that gives you a little bit more control and that gives you a little bit more
Hmm.
certainty of not feeling like, oh my God,
Yep.
you have, of course, if something were to happen in your business or your job, of course that's going to be heartbreaking, but having that little extra cushion
Yes.
is
Makes
going
it
to
a
make
lot
all the
easier
difference in the
to
world. And
Yes, it does. It does. It makes it so much easier that whatever happens, you're like, okay, I'm okay. I can handle this. I'm good.
I can figure it out. I can figure
Hmm.
it out. So
Hmm.
let's alleviate some of that stress and give ourselves that space. I just want to thank you for being here and having this
Thank
conversation.
you.
It definitely was an amazing conversation, timely. And again, y'all, make sure you are following her so you can get all of the information and get in these intensives so that you can start building your runway.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome. And it's great always to talk through and get all the ideas and thoughts out. So I appreciate this. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it was a blessing all around. Again, we talked a lot about God. I feel like God puts together, the moments, the situations, and I hope that the listeners got a lot out of this conversation. I know I got a lot of conversation. So, even if I'm just being selfish, I got a lot of the conversation. I know, I'm not going to say I hope, I know that the listeners will as
Mhm.
well. So I want to thank you guys for being here, and I will see you guys next week. Thank you for listening to the Profits in Pajamas podcast. I hope you got some great tips to start working with ease. Want to stay connected? Follow me at Your Workflow on Instagram. For more information about building your luxury brand, register for my upcoming luxury brand workshop at CoachDannyD.com.